was supposed to be one night of pretending, but the man she paid to be her date was hiding a truth that could destroy everything. Emma Rose sat at her desk, the cursor on her half-finished presentation blinking like a heartbeat she couldn't steady. Numbers swam in front of her eyes, but all she could hear was the sharp crack of Ryan Mitchell's laughter echoing across the open office floor. It carried easily, like it always did, sliding past partitions and screens, straight into the cracks he had carved into her self-worth. "She used to bring me coffee every morning," Ryan was saying to a group huddled in the break room, his voice dripping with amusement. "Poor girl thought I was going to propose. Had to explain to her I needed someone more mature." The words hit their mark even from a distance, and Emma tightened her grip on the paper cup in her hand until the lid bent. 6 months. 6 long, hollow months since their breakup, and he was still using her heartbreak as party material. She had once dreamed of working at Sterling Communications, imagined late nights in polished glass offices where ideas turned into campaigns that could change the way people thought. Now, every morning she walked through those same glass doors, she carried the dread of what Ryan might say next, which story he would twist, which smirk he would flash that told everyone she had been nothing more than his temporary amusement. It might have been easier to endure if not for the promotion he had been handed last month, the same one she had been overlooked for, despite her numbers outperforming his. The higher he climbed, the smaller he made her feel. When Jessica Walsh glided by with that sweet poison smile and mentioned the company gala, Emma felt her stomach clench. "Such a shame if you showed up alone again," Jessica cooed, her words laced with the kind of pity designed to sting. The gala wasn't drained, just a party. It was the event. A ballroom glittering with chandeliers, the city's skyline pouring in through glass walls, a stage where reputations were polished or broken. Everyone would bring someone. Everyone except, it seemed, Emma. The thought of walking in alone, of Ryan arriving with his new girlfriend draped on his arm, was unbearable. That night, in the cramped quiet of her apartment, Emma curled up on her couch with her laptop and desperation clawing at her chest. She told herself she was just looking, just curious, but the truth was sharper. She was hunting for an escape. Page after page blurred together, men with practiced smiles, glossy but hollow descriptions, offers too cheap to be trustworthy. She nearly shut it all down, ashamed of even considering it, when one profile made her pause. Gabriel Stone. The name was simple, unpretentious. The photograph was not. A man in his early 30s stood framed in tailored black, green eyes sharp and steady, posture relaxed but commanding. He looked like someone who didn't need to try, like he belonged in a boardroom, not on a rented companion site. His description was short, professional, almost businesslike, discreet companion for social events, experienced in corporate environments, available for dinners, galas, business functions. Rate, $800 per evening. Emma stared at the number, biting her lip. It was more than she should spend, more than she could justify. But something about him felt different. No stock photo smile, no overeager promises. He seemed real, solid, safe. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard as doubt and humiliation battled in her chest. Then she typed, "Hello, Gabriel. I need an escort for my company's annual gala this Saturday evening. The event starts at 7 and will likely run until midnight. Are you available? Please let me know if you need any additional information." She pressed send and instantly regretted it, heart hammering. But 30 minutes later, her screen lit with a reply. "Hello, Emma. I'm available for Saturday evening. Before we proceed, I'd like to meet in person to discuss the details and ensure we're compatible for the event. Would tomorrow at 6 work for you? I suggest the Meridian Cafe on 5th Street. Emma blinked at the message, her pulse racing. Not payment details, not an address, a meeting. A man she had never met, a stranger she was about to hire to play her boyfriend, wanted to see her face-to-face first. Why? What kind of escort insisted on compatibility, professionalism, or something else entirely? She shut the laptop slowly, staring into the shadows of her apartment. For the first time in months, she felt something stir inside her chest. Not relief, not comfort, but a flicker of anticipation. A stranger with sharp green eyes had just stepped into her carefully crumbling world, and Emma couldn't tell if he was about to save her from ruin or lead her straight into it. Emma arrived at the Meridian Cafe 10 minutes early, her nerves stretched taut like piano wires. The cafe itself was warm but elegant, softly lit by amber sconces and tall windows that caught the late glow of the city. The low murmur of voices blended with the clink of glassware, but even the calm atmosphere couldn't steady the storm in her chest. She adjusted the strap of her bag, checked her reflection in her phone's dark screen, and tried to summon the confident version of herself she hadn't seen in months. She needed to look like a woman who deserved someone like him, not someone crawling out of Ryan Mitchell's shadow. At exactly 6 o'clock, the door opened. Emma's breath caught. Gabriel Stone did not walk in like a man arriving for a business arrangement. He walked in like the room already belonged to him. Tall, lean, his dark hair swept. Neatly back, he wore a charcoal suit that seemed cut from shadow itself, sharp lines flowing over broad shoulders. His green eyes scanned the room once and settled on her without hesitation. In that moment, it felt as if every other voice in the cafe lowered. He crossed the floor with an ease that suggested he'd been raised in places like this: private clubs, glass towers, quiet spaces where important conversations decided futures. "Emma?" His voice was low, warm, and carried the subtle authority of someone used to being answered. She stood quickly, almost too quickly, and reached for his hand. His grip was firm, not rehearsed, and startlingly warm. "Thank you for meeting me," she managed, her throat drier than she expected. "My pleasure." He gestured for her to sit before he did, as though she were the one in control of the evening. The gesture disarmed her almost as much as the faint smile tugging at his lips, a smile that didn't quite give away what he was thinking. Emma opened the folder she had carried like a lifeline. "I brought the details of the event, the Sterling Communications Gala, this Saturday. The venue is the Grand Hyatt, formal attire. Cocktails at 7, dinner at 8, dancing until midnight." Gabriel listened in silence, his attention so focused it made her fidget. No phone glances, no distracted nods, just sharp, steady eyes and the weight of his attention. "And what do you need from me?" The directness startled her. She had prepared for this question, but under his gaze, the words felt embarrassingly small. "I need you to pretend to be my boyfriend, convincingly enough that my colleagues, and one person in particular, believe it." "An ex," Gabriel said. It wasn't a guess. "Yes." The word was small, ashamed. "Ryan Mitchell. He's made my life difficult." Gabriel leaned back in his chair, folding his hands loosely in front of him. "Tell me about him." And she did. Against her better judgment, the words tumbled out: the manipulation, the public humiliation, the way Ryan poisoned her professional reputation until she was passed over for the promotion she had earned. She hadn't planned to share so much, but Gabriel didn't interrupt. He listened, asking precise questions now and then, pulling more from her than she meant to reveal. For 20 minutes, she spoke, and he listened, really listened. When she finally stopped, the silence between them wasn't awkward. It was steady, like the space had been cleared for something new. "We'll need a believable backstory," Emma said at last, trying to regain control of the meeting. She spread her notes across the table, tapping a line. "I thought we could say we met at a coffee shop 3 months ago. You're a consultant who travels often, which explains why my colleagues haven't met you. It's simple, plausible. Consultant in what field?" His eyes glinted with quiet amusement. Emma faltered. "Investment consulting? Or maybe small business strategy?" "Small business strategy," Gabriel repeated, rolling the words on his tongue as though tasting their weight. "Interesting choice. And how did I win you over?" Her cheeks burned. She hadn't written that part. "You're patient, thoughtful. You respect my independence. You don't try to control me the way Ryan did." The corner of Gabriel's mouth curved, his green eyes locking onto hers. "That sounds like a man worth dating." The intensity in his voice, so soft, so sincere, made her forget for a heartbeat that this was all pretend. But as the evening stretched on, little cracks in the illusion appeared. Gabriel knew about SES, Sterling Communications' corporate structure, without her ever mentioning it. When she casually referenced the CEO, Jonathan Sterling, Gabriel's expression shifted, just for a second, but enough to register. His questions about the company's merger sounded less like idle curiosity and more like a man analyzing weaknesses. Then the bill arrived. Emma reached for her card, determined to prove she could handle her half, but Gabriel set down his own without hesitation. It wasn't the payment that made her freeze. It was the gleaming black metal of the American Express card. A centurion, the kind reserved for the impossibly wealthy, the kind whispered about in magazines. She caught his name on the card before he slipped it back into his wallet. Gabriel Stone, no alias, no pretense. Her heart raced. If he was just a companion for hire, why carry a card reserved for billionaires? Why the air of quiet command? Why insist on a meeting when every other man she'd contacted was ready to exchange money for an address? As they walked out into the night, Gabriel hailed a taxi for her with casual ease, tucking his phone back into his pocket. "I'll pick you up at 6:30 on Saturday," he said. "Text me your address tomorrow." "You don't need it now?" His smile was enigmatic, unreadable in the glow of the streetlights. "I'll wait for your message." The taxi door shut, and as the city blurred past the window, Emma pressed her hand to her chest, where her heart thundered far too fast. She had hired a stranger to save her from humiliation. But Gabriel Stone was no ordinary stranger. He was something else entirely, and Emma could no longer tell whether he was her salvation or her greatest mistake. The Grand Hyatt's ballroom gleamed like a jewel box, chandeliers scattering light across silk-draped tables, champagne flutes chiming softly as waiters floated between clusters of executives and their polished partners. Emma stood at the edge of the marble entryway, clutching her mother's vintage clutch so tightly her knuckles ached. The burgundy dress she had chosen swayed gently with her breath, elegant but safe. Yet tonight it felt like armor too thin for the battlefield she was about to step into. And then, beside her, Gabriel adjusted the cuff of his midnight tuxedo. The fabric caught the light like water, his posture relaxed but unyielding, as though he had been born to command attention. He turned to her, offering a single white rose, and for a moment the room blurred away. "You look beautiful," he said softly, his voice pitched low enough for only her. Emma forced a steady smile. "You look like you walked out of a magazine." "Good," he replied, offering her his arm. "Let's make Ryan Mitchell regret every choice he ever made." The words sank into her bones like a promise, and as they walked into the ballroom together, Emma felt heads turning. The shift in the atmosphere was undeniable. Colleagues who barely noticed her before now watched her with thinly veiled curiosity, eyes darting from her face to Gabriel's sharp green gaze, as if trying to place him. Gabriel didn't just blend in, he owned the room. "Emma," Rebecca Chen from accounting nearly squealed as she hurried over. "You look stunning, and who is this handsome gentleman?" "Rebecca, this is Gabriel, my boyfriend." "Gabriel, this is Rebecca." Gabriel extended his hand, his smile warm but precise. "Pleasure to meet you." Emma has spoken about her colleagues with such fondness. Rebecca flushed, caught in the net of his charm. "How long have you two been together?" 3 months, Gabriel answered smoothly, his tone carrying just enough fondness to make the lie believable. He turned his eyes to Emma, and for a split second the look wasn't part of any script. Though it feels much longer. When you meet the right person, time becomes irrelevant. Emma's heart stuttered. He said it for show. He had to. And yet the weight of his gaze made her doubt everything she thought was pretend. They moved through the room together like a pair choreographed long before tonight. Gabriel conversed with the finance team about market fluctuations, charmed the creative department by dissecting trends in digital marketing, even swapped travel anecdotes with the international division. Emma could only watch in amazement as he folded himself into every circle seamlessly. Her fake date, her hired companion, was outshining the most seasoned executives of Sterling Communications without even trying. And then came the moment Emma had been dreading, Ryan Mitchell. He was posted at the bar with a whiskey glass in hand, his suit a shade too sharp, his smile already smug. When his eyes landed on Emma, his brows arched in mock surprise before sliding to Gabriel. He approached with the swagger of a man who believed he owned the ground he walked on. "Emma," he drawled, his voice loud enough to carry. "You look lovely tonight. I was hoping we might share a dance, for old time's sake." Emma's stomach turned, but before she could respond, Gabriel's hand slid into hers beneath the table. Steady, warm, grounding. "I'm here with my boyfriend, Ryan. I'm not interested in dancing with you." Ryan's smirk faltered, then sharpened as his gaze cut to Gabriel. "And you are?" "Gabriel Stone," he replied, standing with calm precision. He extended his hand, and Ryan, caught off guard, took it. Gabriel's grip was unyielding, and Emma noticed the slight wince Ryan tried to hide. "So, Gabriel," Ryan sneered, "what do you do for a living?" "I'm an investment consultant." Ryan chuckled, the sound bitter. "Consultant, such a vague term, isn't it? What kind of consulting exactly?" Emma braced for Gabriel to falter, but his expression remained perfectly calm, steel beneath water. "I help companies make intelligent financial decisions, portfolio management, merger analysis, risk assessment." "Impressive," Ryan said, his tone thick with sarcasm. "And I suppose you do, well, for yourself?" Gabriel's smile never wavered. "Well enough." The words carried no arrogance, only certainty. Ryan leaned closer, his voice dropping to a whisper meant to sting. "Listen, friend, Emma hired you to make me jealous. She's not over me. She'll always come back." Emma's pulse thudded painfully, shame flooding her cheeks. But Gabriel stood slowly, his height shadowing Ryan, his voice low and edged with finality. "Ryan, I'm going to say this once. Emma is here with me. She's not interested in your dances, your attention, or your conversations. If you persist in bothering her, then yes, we'll have a problem." The air thickened around them. Tables nearby had fallen silent, sensing the tension. Ryan faltered, his confidence cracking under Gabriel's steady, unblinking gaze. You threatening me? I'm setting boundaries, Gabriel replied, his tone cutting with quiet precision. Respect them. Ryan stepped back, his smirk struggling to mask retreat. But before the moment could sour further, the sound of hurried footsteps and clipped voices sliced through the ballroom. Jonathan Sterling, the CEO himself, stood near the center, his phone pressed tight to his ear. Executives gathered around him, their expressions pale. The hum of panic spread quickly through the gala. What's happening? Emma whispered, catching the sleeve of a passing colleague. The Morrison account, the man whispered. Back. They're threatening to pull their contract. Millions lost. It could ruin the company. Emma froze. The Morrison Group was Sterling Communications' biggest client. Without them, the company could collapse. Executives huddled in circles, murmuring legal jargon and panic. And then, without hesitation, Gabriel excused himself from Emma's side and walked directly toward the storm. Excuse me, Mr. Sterling, he said, his voice polite but firm, cutting through the chaos. If you don't mind my asking, what exactly is the issue? Jonathan blinked at him in surprise, but frustration made him answer. They're accusing us of failing performance metrics. They want to terminate immediately with penalties. Gabriel nodded once, thoughtful. His presence was no longer companion-like. It was commanding, precise. Have you reviewed the force majeure clause? If their own acquisition altered the performance metrics, you may have grounds to dispute. They may be applying standards irrelevant to the original agreement. The room fell silent. All eyes shifted to him. Gabriel continued, each word carrying the authority of a man who had negotiated battles worth millions. Furthermore, Morrison's lawyers will push aggressively, but their acquisition last quarter changed their own baselines. You could argue, breach of fairness. Jonathan's jaw slackened. How do you know about the acquisition? Gabriel paused only a heartbeat. It was announced in the financial press. I make it my business to stay informed. Emma's chest tightened. She had seen men perform confidence before. Ryan had mastered arrogance as performance, but this wasn't performance. This was power. Gabriel Stone had just saved Sterling Communications from a disaster with the ease of a man who did it daily. And Emma Rose, sitting in her burgundy dress and clutching a glass she'd forgotten to sip, realized her stranger was no hit. Red companion at all, he was something else, something far more dangerous and far more irresistible. The gala had ended hours ago, but Emma hadn't slept. She sat cross-legged on her couch in pajamas, laptop perched on her knees, the glow of the screen casting restless shadows on her walls. Her mind replayed the night on an endless loop, Gabriel's hand closing over hers beneath the dinner table, his voice cutting Ryan down with quiet precision, the way he had stepped into the center of Sterling's executive crisis and solved it as if it were nothing more than a math equation. No companion for hire should have been able to do that. Her fingers flew across the keys as she searched for answers. Gabriel Stone consultant, Gabriel Stone New York, Gabriel Stone business strategist. The results were sparse, almost deliberately so. LinkedIn profiles that looked like placeholders, business directory listings with no substance, ghost traces of a man too polished to be this invisible. Frustrated, she shifted tactics. Stone Enterprises, Stone Capital, Stone Investments. The third search made her breath catch. Stone Enterprises, founded 2019. CEO, Gabriel Stone. Headquarters, Manhattan Financial District. Assets under management, $3.2 billion. Emma leaned closer, her pulse hammering as she clicked through the sleek black and white website. Gleaming office buildings, testimonials from Fortune 500 companies, a carefully worded mission statement about revolutionizing investment strategies for the digital age. But it was the About Us page that left her cold. Stone Enterprises was founded by Gabriel Stone with a vision to transform modern investment. Under his leadership, the firm has become one of the fastest-growing investment companies in the country. Her stomach dropped. There it was, his face in a professional headshot, those unmistakable green eyes, the confident jawline, the same presence she had seen walk into the cafe and command a ballroom. Not a consultant, not a hired compa. Nyon, a billionaire CEO. Her coffee sat untouched, growing cold. She grabbed her phone with shaking hands and dialed. Gabriel answered on the second ring, his tone warm, unguarded. Emma, good morning. I was just thinking about our dinner plans. Her voice came out sharper than she intended. Gabriel, we need to talk. Now. A pause. Then his tone shifted, serious. What's wrong? Stone Enterprises ring any bells? Silence stretched over the line, heavy as stone. Where are you? She pressed. My apartment. And you're going to come here right now, Emma said, her voice trembling but firm. And explain to me how a billionaire CEO ends up on an escort site. Another pause. Then, I'll be there in 20 minutes. When he arrived, he was dressed down. Jeans, a dark sweater, no tailored armor. He looked younger, almost ordinary, but Emma was too furious, too shaken to be charmed. She pointed to the couch. Sit. Start talking. Gabriel ran a hand through his hair, a gesture that betrayed nerves. Emma, I know how this looks. Do you? She snapped open her laptop, the Stone Enterprises homepage glaring back at them. Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like I paid a billionaire to play my fake boyfriend. Do you have any idea how humiliating that is? I never lied to you. Never lied? She jabbed at the screen. You're Gabriel Stone, CEO, founder, $3 billion in assets. You let me believe. If I had told you who I was, Gabriel cut in, his voice suddenly sharper. Would you have believed me, or would you have slammed the laptop shut and run the other way? The words hung between them, raw and unflinching. Emma turned away, pacing across her living room. Anger battled with something more dangerous. Hurt. He hadn't tricked her into bed, hadn't taken advantage, but he had stripped her of her choice to know the truth. You made me feel like a fool, she whispered. All those times I wondered why you didn't fit, why you knew too much, Because I wanted to be seen as a man, Emma. Not as a balance sheet, not as a walking bank account. Gabriel stood, moving closer, his voice low but urgent. You hired me because you weren't looking for money or status. You just wanted someone to stand beside you. That was the first honest thing anyone has asked of me in years. Her chest tightened. There was vulnerability in his eyes now, not the polished veneer of the CEO, but a man stripped of defenses. Still, her anger clung stubbornly. So this was a game, a thrill, a billionaire slumming it for entertainment? No. He knelt in front of her chair, his gaze unflinching. Emma, what I felt last night, what I feel now is more real than anything in the world I come from. I wasn't playing a role, not with you. Before she could answer, her phone shrilled. Jessica Walsh's name flashed on the screen. Emma almost ignored it, but something in the pit of her stomach warned her not to. Jessica, she said, her voice tight. Emma, thank God. You need to get to the office, now. Jessica's voice was high, almost gleeful in its urgency. Jonathan Sterling called an emergency meeting. It's about you and your boyfriend. Emma's blood ran cold. What about us? Ryan told Mr. Sterling that Gabriel was asking suspicious questions about company finances. He's claiming your boyfriend is involved in corporate espionage. Emma's gaze snapped to Gabriel, who had already read the fear on her face. His jaw tightened, his expression shifting into something steel-edged. I'll be there in an hour, Emma said, hanging up. I'm coming with you, Gabriel said immediately. No, this is my problem. This is exactly my problem. His voice was quiet, deadly serious. Ryan is trying to use me to destroy you, and I won't allow him. That happen. Emma's pulse thundered in her ears. Ryan's cruelty had always been personal, but now, with Gabriel's secret identity hanging over everything, it had turned into a war that could shatter not just her career, but the fragile, impossible connection she had begun to crave. The Sterling Communications headquarters was a hollow echo of itself on Sunday afternoon. The glass tower, normally buzzing with interns, phones, and clattering keyboards, felt eerily silent. Only the executive floor pulsed with tension, its polished corridors carrying the sound of low voices from behind the closed doors of the mahogany conference room. Emma's heels clicked against the marble as she and Gabriel approached. Every step felt like walking into her own execution. Her palms were damp, her throat tight, her thoughts spiraling around the single unshakable truth. Ryan Mitchell had done it. He had found the one way to weaponize her fake date, twisting Gabriel's presence into the perfect accusation. When she pushed open the heavy door, the room stilled. Jonathan Sterling sat at the head of the long table, his silver hair catching the muted light. To his left and right were two senior executives she barely knew, and across the table, leaning back with smug satisfaction, was Ryan. His whiskey glass was gone, replaced by a neat stack of papers, evidence Emma realized with a cold shock that he had prepared for this moment. Emma, Jonathan said, his tone clipped, please sit. Emma obeyed, sliding into a chair with Gabriel at her side. The atmosphere was suffocating. Ryan leaned forward, folding his hands, his smile practiced and poisonous. Mr. Sterling, Ryan began smoothly, I've been doing some research on Emma's companion. His eyes flicked to Gabriel, glinting with mock concern. Gabriel Stone. You may not know this, but he's been asking suspiciously detailed questions about Stone, Rolling's finances, and as you'll see from the documentation I've provided, he's involved in questionable practices, shell companies, offshore accounts, investment trails that don't add up. Jonathan's gaze sharpened, turning toward Gabriel. If this is true, Mr. Stone, it could represent a serious conflict of interest for Sterling Communications. Emma's pulse roared in her ears. Mr. Sterling, please. This is all a setup. Ryan has been harassing me for months, ever since our breakup. Ryan laughed, cutting her off, deflecting, as always. The fact is, Emma lied about who this man really is. She's compromised. And if Sterling Communications is tainted by association with Stone... Enough! Jonathan snapped, his voice like a whip. His eyes swung back to Gabriel. Mr. Stone, I expect an explanation. Now. Emma opened her mouth to defend him, but Gabriel's hand pressed gently against hers on the table, stilling her. When she looked at him, her breath caught. Gone was the smooth companion with the polite smile. In his place sat someone entirely different. His eyes were sharp, calculating. His posture radiated authority. Mr. Sterling, Gabriel said calmly, his voice cutting through the room. Would you mind if I made a phone call? Jonathan blinked, startled. What? There's been a misunderstanding, Gabriel continued evenly. But rather than waste your time with rebuttals, I'd prefer to provide clarity. May I? The silence in the room was electric. Jonathan gave a reluctant nod. Gabriel pulled out his phone and dialed. Marcus, he said quietly, connect me to Sterling Communications CEO. Now, secure line. Emma's skin prickled. Connect him to Sterling's CEO? She turned toward Jonathan in confusion, only to see the man himself staring at Gabriel as though he'd just misheard his own title. Moments later, Gabriel placed his phone on speaker. A crisp voice came through. Mr. Sterling, this is Marcus Reed from Stone Enterprises. I believe you have Gabriel Stone in your office? Jonathan's face drained of color. Stone Enterprises? Yes, sir, Marcus replied smoothly. Gabriel Stone is our CEO and founder. I understand there may be questions about his presence at your company. Allow me to clarify. Stone Enterprises currently holds an 18% stake in Sterling Communications. Mr. Stone is not only your guest, he is one of your largest investors. The room froze. Emma's heart pounded. Ryan's smirk slid off his face as though someone had yanked it away. Jonathan Sterling's jaw slackened, his pen clattering against the table. Gabriel ended the call and rose to his feet with deliberate calm, his presence towering over the room. Now, let's address these accusations. Shell companies, offshore accounts, I invite you to contact the SEC, the IRS, or any financial oversight body. Stone Enterprises operates under the highest standards of compliance. Our portfolio is transparent. He turned his gaze to Ryan, and the temperature in the room dropped. What concerns me more is that one of your senior account managers, his voice hardened, used company resources to investigate a major investor's personal life without authorization. That is not only unethical, it is grounds for immediate termination. Jonathan swallowed hard. Mr. Stone, I had no idea. You didn't need to, Gabriel cut in, his tone ice. All you needed to know is that last night I prevented Morrison Group from walking away with millions of your revenue. I did that because my company believes in Sterling Communications. We invested in your future. But I don't invest in incompetence or disloyalty. His gaze pinned Ryan like a blade. And what I see here is both. Ryan's face was pale now, his confidence shattered. This doesn't change the fact that Emma lied. She hired an escort. Gabriel's smile was cold, dangerous. Careful. He leaned forward slightly, his voice dropping into steel. Emma never hired an escort. She engaged a companion service owned by Stone Enterprises, Hospitality Division. A perfectly legal, professional arrangement. Every detail documented, every cent accounted for. What you've done is fabricate lies to smear your colleague and compromise the reputation of your own company. Tell me, Mr. Sterling, how long can a company survive with employees like this? Jonathan Sterling turned toward Ryan, his face red with fury. Pack your things. Security will escort you out immediately. The room erupted into murmurs as Ryan stammered, You can't do this. But the guards were already at the door. In minutes, the man who had made Emma's life a daily humiliation was reduced to a broken shadow, escorted out under the weight of his own failure. Silence settled when the door closed. Jonathan rubbed a hand across his face, then turned to Emma, his expression softened with something like guilt. Miss Rose, I owe you an apology and a correction. The promotion you were denied, it's yours, effective immediately. Emma could barely breathe, relief tangled with disbelief. Tears threatening at the edges of her vision. She looked at Gabriel, who stood with the quiet dominance of a man who had just shifted the ground beneath everyone's feet. And for the first time, she realized Ryan had been the enemy she thought she feared. But Gabriel was the storm. The kind of man who didn't just survive battles, he ended them. The conference room had emptied. The polished table still held the ghost of tension. Half-drunk glasses of water, scattered notepads, a pen that had rolled forgotten to the floor. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, the city glowed with twilight, skyscrapers blazing like distant constellations. Emma stood at the far end of the table, her arms wrapped around herself, staring at her reflection in the glass. Behind her, Gabriel closed the door with deliberate quiet. The echo seemed final, sealing them off from the chaos of the past hour. For a long moment, neither spoke. Emma felt her breath rise and fall too quickly, her chest tight with adrenaline that hadn't yet burned away. When she finally turned, Gabriel was watching her, not the way he had watched Ryan or Jonathan Sterling or the executives. No calculation, no mask, just a steady, almost vulnerable intensity. "I know I should have told you," he said softly. "From the beginning." Emma laughed bitterly, though her voice cracked. "You think?" She gestured wildly at the empty room. "Gabriel, you walked into my life as a stranger, pretended to be a companion for hire, and let me pay you to play my boyfriend. Meanwhile, you're sitting on billions. You don't think that's something I deserve to know?" Gabriel stepped closer, his expression raw. "If I had told you I was Gabriel Stone, billionaire investor CEO, would you have let me in? Or would you have walked away before you ever gave me a chance to prove I was more than that?" Emma's throat tightened. She wanted to argue, to hurl the words she'd rehearsed in her head during every sleepless hour of the past 24. But the truth snagged her tongue. Because he was right. She would have walked away. "That doesn't make it okay," she whispered. "I know." He came closer still, until he stood just feet away, the glow of the skyline painting his profile in molten gold. "I'm not asking you to excuse it. I'm asking you to see me. Not the company. Not the fortune. Not the man Ryan tried to twist into a weapon against you. Me." Her chest ached. She searched his face for deceit, arrogance, the performance she had feared. But what she found instead was startlingly simple. Vulnerability. "You saved my career today," she said, her voice trembling. "You protected me from Ryan. You gave me back my dignity." Gabriel's eyes softened. "That's what anyone who cares about you would do." Emma's breath hitched. "But you're not just anyone." He reached for her hand, his grip warm, grounding. "I don't want to be just anyone. Not to you." Her defenses wavered. She thought of the girl who had sat alone in her apartment days ago, scrolling through profiles with desperation and shame. The woman who had hired a stranger to shield her from humiliation. And now, here she was, standing across from a man who could command boardrooms, dismantle enemies, and yet speak to her as though her opinion carried more weight than the billions he controlled. "What do you want from me, Gabriel?" she whispered. He didn't flinch. "I want mornings with coffee and newspapers. I want to argue about movies we'll both forget the endings to. I want someone who makes me laugh when I take myself too seriously. I want—" His voice lowered. "I want you, Emma, not because you need me, not because of what I own, because when you look at me, you don't see a dollar sign, you see a man, and no one has done that in a very long time." Tears blurred her vision. "And what about the fact that you're worth more than I could ever dream of? What about the fact that I paid you to stand beside me? What about it?" His thumb brushed gently across her knuckles. "I've had money for years. It never made me happy. But these last few days, pretending, listening, watching you fight even when you thought you couldn't, I've been happier than I have in years. Don't tell me that was fake, because it wasn't. Not for me." Emma's breath came unsteady, her heart pounding as though trying to break free of her ribs. Slowly she stepped closer. Their distance closed until his presence enveloped her, steady and overwhelming. For one heartbeat she hesitated, afraid of the final leap. Then she rose on her toes and kissed him. The kiss was nothing like the performance at the gala, nothing like the stage touches or scripted smiles. It was soft, almost tentative, but it burned with truth. His hand rose to cradle her jaw, and for the first time, Emma felt the sharp edge of her fear dull into something weightless. When they broke apart, her forehead rested against his, both of them breathing hard, caught in the fragile silence of a moment that felt too big to name. "So what happens now?" she whispered. "Now," Gabriel said, his lips brushing her skin as he spoke. "We stop pretending. We write our own story." The sound of those words filled her chest with something she hadn't felt in months. Hope. 6 months later, Emma stood in Gabriel's penthouse, the skyline stretching beyond their floor-to-ceiling windows. On the coffee table lay 2 objects that summed up their impossible, extraordinary journey. The latest issue of Fortune magazine with Gabriel's face on the cover, and beside it, a handwritten grocery list in Emma's script, with Gabriel's scrawl at the bottom. Chocolate ice cream. The engagement ring on her finger caught the sunset, scattering light across the room. It wasn't the size of the diamond that made her smile. It was the simplicity of it, the way Gabriel had chosen it not for price, but for meaning. She looked at him across the room, sleeves rolled, laughter crinkling the corners of his green eyes as he teased her about burning toast. The man who commanded billions now belonged entirely, impossibly, to her. Their story had started with lies and disguises, with desperation and humiliation. But it had ended here, in truth, in love, in something money could never buy. Emma Rose had hired a stranger to be her fake boyfriend. She had found instead the love of her life,